Hey guys, how's it going? Jalene here with JovesStar Astrology. Hope you guys are doing well. It's the holiday season. There's a lot of hustle and bustle. And I missed y'all for the last new moon in Sagittarius that happened on November 30th. Apologies for that. Things have been a little crazy. If you've hung in there, I so appreciate it. If you're new here, consider liking the video, subscribing if you like the stuff, if you like the information. We'd greatly appreciate that. We're going to go over the full moon that we're having on December the 15th in the sign of Gemini. And even though we missed the new moon, which is what they say is the seeding point of this cycle, it kind of isn't short, it can be, but really no worries because we can roll this back to June the 7th when we had a new moon in Gemini. And that was 6 months ago. And so there's a cycle that is related here. So as we're going through all of this information, think about what was seeded or started or happened back in June, on June 7th. When we had the new moon in Gemini. And of course, Gemini, ruled by Mercury, is all about communication and information and putting data together and learning about something. So, that this cycle, this full moon is also, those are the themes around this full moon too, right? Gemini, the sign of communication. And at that time, I have the new moon up here. I'm not going to show it to you, but at that time, the ruler was in the sign of Gemini. So very strong. This time around it's the opposite, So we have Mercury that is just coming out of retrograde when this full moon occurs, that is in the sign of Sagittarius. It's opposite sign. So I wonder what that means, right? It's in its opposite sign now. So in the opposition to this new moon by sign anyway, what has come full circle or half circle, or what are we seeing in a different perspective or a different light in terms of the information? What came in June? Are we putting something out from back there, from back then, or the last 6 months? Are we putting something out now, right? We'll see. The fact that we are just coming out of a Mercury retrograde indicates that this is something that we were reworking, redoing, relearning, all of those kind of words that we talk about during Mercury retrograde. And this Mercury retrograde, I don't know about you guys, was kind of a doozy a little bit. I mean, nothing horrible happened, but the observations that I made in terms of the kind of communication that was going on in the world and all of the busyness around me, I found it to be a little weird, a little backwards, a little ironic, a little loud. So I don't know. Let me know how this retrograde was for you guys. Of course, as you know, I'm a Gemini everything, but I'm a Gemini rising and Gemini sun. So that is my chart ruler that is coming out of retrograde. So they say it affects us more significantly, but I gotta say, over the years, it's like we are used to dealing with the flip-flop, right? And that's the beautiful thing about Mercury in general, but definitely about Gemini, is we can go from one side to the other and balance that really well and be flexible, just like a mutable sign does, and adopt and maintain the attitude and the mindset that this and or that can be true. So I don't always find it horrible. It's kind of like, well, when things happen, which they do quite frequently when Mercury is involved, and usually quickly, that we just kind of adapt to it, right? We figure it out. We're like, oh gosh, okay, so here we go again. How do we resolve it, you know? So Mercury retrograde is coming to an end. Of course, we're still in the shadow period until it gets back to the degree that it started at, which, and this is very interesting because the degree that the retrograde began was 9 degrees of Sagittarius. And that's where this last new moon that I missed might come in a little bit, right? You might see the connection, and that's what we do with Mercury, right? We connect the dots. The shadow period stays in effect until Mercury gets back to the degree in the sign that it was when it began its retrograde. And that degree is 9 degrees of Sagittarius. Why is that significant? Well, the last new moon was at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. So, so there's a relation here, right? So think about that June, think about this last new moon. What things are coming together? What is the longer story here that we might be dealing with? And there could be a longer, bigger story and many sort of pieces and more than one story. Why? Because Gemini is more than one, it's multiples, but also because we have Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, which just makes everything bigger. So interesting times right now. Yeah, we're going to break down the chart and take a look at this full moon and all of the things that are going on in the chart as well. And yeah, we'll just break it down a little bit. But again, thank you for being here. Like, share, subscribe, comment. All of that helps me grow the channel, which is just inching up ever so slowly, but it's okay. I'm fine with that. And yeah, and of course, you know, if you need to get a hold of me, if you'd like to take a look at your birth chart, all of my information is down below. My email address and the link to my website where you can send me a message as well. I'd love to meet you if you'd like to break down your chart. Okay, I'm going to throw the chart up here. And we're going to take a look. And of course, we'll also talk about the Sabian symbol, which I usually do. And sometimes when I get started, right, I forget to do the Sabian symbol. So lately I've been trying to do the Sabian symbol first. And it kind of gives us a bit of an essence, right? So this full moon is at 23 degrees of Gemini, right? Happening December 15th, which is this Sunday. I'm recording this on December the 13th, Friday, December 13th. Oh, Friday the 13th. Okay. And it's a very, very early morning new moon. And I need to change I'm going to. I don't need to change it, but I just noticed, that and you can see me actually doing this, which is kind of cool. That the place that I put it on defaulted and I don't want it there. So give me just a second and I'll switch it to what I'm comfortable with. Here, after I said, oh, Gemini, we are so flexible. We are, but I have a lot of Virgo too. So suffice it to say, I do like my routines in some way. Okay. There you go. So December 15th, this Sunday, coming in very early in the morning. Of course, you guys know I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. This full moon is happening 4 a.m. Oh my goodness, 4 a.m. Sunday. So 7 a.m. on the East Coast. Check a time zone converter for your area to see what time the full moon is going to come in. If you are one that likes to actually go out and view it, you may be able to get a good look at it. Okay. So the Sabian symbol, 23 degrees of Gemini. We look at 24 degrees for the Sabian symbol. And I'm going to take a look here at my Sabian symbol books and see what we have. Okay, so I'm going to read out of the Zodiac by Degrees book this time because, like I said before, it's a little more modern. I'm going to take a peek really quick, though, just at the keyword for this Sabian symbol. because it's always cool to look at, you know, the different perspectives, right? More words. When you're talking about Gemini, words are not a problem. It's like more words, more words. Okay. So the key word for this full moon, 24 degrees of Gemini, the key word is fun, right? The actual Sabian symbol was written and the concept was children skating on ice. Keyword fun. Okay, so maybe this indicates that, you know, this is intended to be a sort of light and joyful type of full moon. Of course, we are in December, just a very short time here from Christmas Day and the holidays here in the United States, if that's something you celebrate. So that might be appropriate. Okay. Oops. All right. Hang on a second. I just dropped my writing pad. Oh my goodness. Gemini's gadgets, by the way, as well. So there we go. We just had a little faux pas there. All right. So 24 degrees of Gemini, as written by Martin Goldsmith. An outsider sets up an easel in the center of a slum. Despite hostile stares, she begins to paint a large surrealistic representation of her surroundings. Boy, isn't that talking about perception, right? Refusing to buy into conventional analytical frameworks, but starting from an empty canvas. The outsider's ability to frame reality in a new way, brash imperviousness to social criticism, confidently introducing a new cultural sensibility or a new vision of reality, traveling into contested or enemy territory, brave, adventurous versus foolhardiness, establishing the first outlines of the situation, connecting the dots, very Gemini, it's what we do, versus coming to inaccurate conclusions based on superficial readings, have their head in the clouds, need to pay more attention to the work-a-day facts of their situation, subjective or artistic views of reality, openness to imaginative or channeled vision, being open to the big picture, winning people over to one's point of view, visionaries and dreamers. Well, I guess this all depends on what's, you know, where you're coming from and to how you might view the essence of this time and this full moon, right? Are we getting out of control? Are we moving so fast we're not paying attention to the details? Are we speaking out of turn or before we have all the facts? Are we believing things that may be a little bit embellished, right? Remember, we have Jupiter there, which is the ruler of this new moon. Even though it's retrograde, right? But nonetheless, so it's a little slower, right? Maybe it's not quite seeing the truth as clearly as it could. Nonetheless, maybe we're talking about wiping the slate clean and thinking and taking on a different perspective based on what we have learned from the past, right? It kind of depends. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, what's going on in your life. I know when we have, like, during this time frame, and then, you know, when we have you know, periods of time and astrological events that are really focused on communication, like this is, you know, there can be a lot coming through, right? And with Jupiter there, the ruler in Gemini, it just makes it even more. There's even more stuff, and there's a tendency to not really have much of a filter, or to hear, like I said earlier, the irony of things, you know, and maybe having things shake out and come into our mind in a way that we didn't quite expect to either hear it or see it or even say it, right? If we're the one talking or speaking. So I think we've seen some of that stuff going on too, you know. So I was thinking about doing this. I was like, man, you know, there have been so many things that I could say, oh yeah, this really represents this Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. And of course, we've been in an opposition, you know, to its ruler Mercury for a while. It's a little off the opposition right now, but still in effect. And of course, once Mercury stations and starts to move forward again, because Jupiter won't have gone direct, it won't go direct till February. Darn, we need you, Jupiter. We know you're there for a reason, but we need you. We need a little bit of luck and growth. I don't know, I do. But anyway, maybe, you know, with this opposition, it's like I've been paying attention to like things that are going on. And of course, you know, you can go very basic to, you know, the weather isn't what we expect it to be, the conditions driving on the road and just the attitudes of people, the communication that we're hearing, and just sort of the busyness that's going on around us. And, you know, I've found it to be, you know, some of it's a little bit intense, right? You know, because again, Jupiter and Gemini and then the opposition of Mercury, there, you know, we could actually, it's like, this is a very opinionated Jupiter, right? And Gemini's bringing, you know, information in from so many different sources. And even if it's just communication in terms of like what you're saying, it can be blown out of proportion. It can be just really big. It can be a lot. And, we could be surprised, right, by some things that people say or how things are shaking out or what we're seeing on the roads. It's like, you know, Jupiter and Gemini doesn't always have a filter, right? If it's not in a calm place, it doesn't have something that's tempering it. It really doesn't have a filter. It just kind of says and does what it feels. And so I've observed some funny things like, you know, traffic, weather, things like that. But, you know, even just being in a group of people like around my family for Thanksgiving was really kind of funny because everybody kind of wanted to be in their own little, you know, spot in rooms, you know, but could hear each other, like kind of doing their own thing. You know, we had TV going on. We got a video game here. We got somebody playing on the phone. We got somebody reading. It was like all these different things going on amongst the group, you know, the family group there. But there were comments, right? Somebody would comment on what they're seeing or what their thought was at the time. And, you know, I think everybody was hearing one another, but then not always commenting, but then randomly would take their attention off what they were doing and comment something. And it was just like this really funny ping pong back and forth all over the place kind of conversation and interaction. And actually, it was really funny. And some of the things were really funny. And we might see that, you know, if we can see the humor in some of these, some of the information and some of the movements, that's all the better, because Jupiter and Gemini is super funny. It can be very satirical and can take us by surprise. And so we've seen that, but we've also seen that, you know, in out there in the news. It's like there's so much to take in if you're wanting to take it in, and there's a different slant on everything, and that's not really new, but I think it's like bigger things maybe, or, you know, different and many voices, right? And we can look at this unfortunate situation that happened last week where the CEO of United Healthcare, and, you know, everybody's talked about it. A lot of astrologers have even thrown up the chart, and I've looked at them. But nonetheless, I just want to throw this. It's like throw this out there as an example. But, you know, we had the CEO of United Healthcare that was murdered on the streets of New York, and, you know, obviously murdering anybody is not something that we as a civilized society want to support at all. I don't. However, what shocked me in reading about this and seeing it is that the response from the general public was overwhelmingly, and it was surprising. It was shocking, because the way people were writing things, it was like overwhelmingly in support of this kid, actually, this young person that decided to basically, was vigilantism against the corporate structures, right? Healthcare being it in this particular case, and kind of sacrificed himself, it seems, at this point. I mean, we don't know the whole story yet, but it seems at this point, for what he might believe is the greater good, or at least to get the conversation going. And boy, did it, right? So the comments, I don't know what you guys saw, but it was like overwhelmingly people were supporting him. I sort of looked at it as they're supporting the cause, right? They're supporting, it brought the issue to the surface where I think not that people hadn't realized, and been angry about what has been going on in our healthcare system for a long time, but it opened the window, I think, for a lot of people that otherwise may not have been saying things publicly are now saying things, right? And sort of saying, it's not okay what he did, but we can understand not the reason, because you can't say that, there's really no reason, but we understand that the concept of what the message is in terms of why he did this, right? I mean, nobody should be shot, but that's just awful. But it was a loud statement, right? It was a loud message. Jupiter and Gemini, I saw it that way. And Jupiter is in its detriment in Gemini, right? It can have no filter. It can shoot from the hip sometimes in its opposition to Mercury and Sag, and Mercury and Sagittarius, it's a fire sign. It's going to move real quickly. Thoughts are going to race. And Jupiter and Sagittarius are looking for justice. But again, in this opposition, right, there's irony there. There's things that you wouldn't expect. It's like the backwards response. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I think the conversation needed to come up a long time ago. What I found the most interesting about it, and it wouldn't have mattered what the subject was, is that most everything that we talk about online or have conversations, as a community about, there's just such a clear divide, right? It's this side versus that side, whether it's political, whether it's culture, whether it's social, whatever, religious, it doesn't matter. We've always got those divides and those arguments going back. This particular issue, I couldn't even tell who was coming from where most people usually make that very clear. Everybody was kind of on the same page about the healthcare system, at least, right? Yeah, there were some things said and some, comedy and satirical stuff that really wasn't funny given the situation. But nonetheless, I thought immediately, oh my goodness, this is an extreme example of Jupiter opposite Mercury in the signs of communication, Gemini and Sagittarius. So we'll see what happens going forward. I mean, I hope that the conversation continues in a much more civil way and that we start seeing action. And super sorry that anybody on either side of this situation personally had to make or did make sacrifices or forced to make sacrifices over this subject matter. But it was just one example that I observed that I thought was pretty relevant. You guys know that I've years in the healthcare industry and I have my opinions on all of that. And I from the inside out, I have to say that it's true, and I've seen much more. I've seen much more than I probably ever wanted to. And the facts are the facts. Healthcare has been taken over by corporations. And the primary driver is profit. It just is. And, I could confirm and document that for you in probably almost any way you'd like and within any situation in healthcare. So it's not a lie. It's very, very true. And, Jupiter and Gemini, embellishing things, right? Sometimes it can be a slightly off version of the truth when you're dealing with Jupiter and Gemini, but not always, right? Not always. Okay, enough about that. Let me point out what is going on here. Oh my goodness, and where is my Epic pen? It disappeared, so now I have to find it. Oh, there you are. I had to reboot my computer before I started this, and honestly, I should do that regularly, I know, but I'm really bad at it, so I don't always do it. Now we'll see if this thing is actually going to work for me. Well, oh, hang on, folks. Hang on. Oh, my goodness. These things are flip-flopped here. All right. Let me see if I can get this thing to work now that it's plugged into the right computer. You guys can't see my setup, but I have two computers here so that I can put the images on the screen and still be on the screen myself. Okay, so here we have the full moon, which is the opposition of the sun and moon, in the sign of Gemini. And why does that say, oh, it does say 23 degrees. Okay, I don't know why the moon is off a little bit. It shouldn't be. The timing is a little bit off. And you want to know something? I think it kept, when I edited the chart, this is all Mercury stuff, right? You know, it's still December 13th, so Mercury is retrograde. So I'm going to back this up. When I started this, it came out as New York. Well, I wanted to change it to Phoenix, so I did. But what it didn't do is change the degrees. So the moon is at 25 degrees. That's not correct. The sun's correct at 23. But it's got me like almost like 3 hours ahead here. Not the case. So what that means is we're having this full moon here on where I'm at, right, which is Mountain Standard Time at 1:01 a.m. in the morning. So it's 4:01 on the East Coast. So there you go. You got an opposite kind of wonky, ironic communication there with a laptop and a screen and a program, right? There you go. Still Mercury retrograde. Okay. Just ignore that 25 degrees. So we have the opposition there, which is what a full moon is. We have the ruler of this full moon right there, Jupiter in the sign of Gemini retrograde, right? So Jupiter retrograde, slowing things down a little bit, kind of, you know, internally focused. This is a lot of overthinking for sure. But, you know, Jupiter is a planet of abundance and luck and growth and seeing the bigger picture, having an open mind, and communicating big concepts and ideas, you know, details, right? Bringing a lot of details together. But when it's retrograde, there's a little bit of trouble doing that, which is what can create the irony, right? It's like things come out or we do things before they're actually ready. So for smart, when Jupiter's retrograde, no matter how frustrating it is, and it has been, and not just because Jupiter's retrograde, I'll go into that in a minute, but is to just kind of write it out, right? When in doubt, especially with Gemini and then Jupiter, which is, you know, writing, reading, learning. These are, again, the communication signs, but also the learning and the writing and speaking signs. When in doubt, write it out, right? If it's not coming out, write it down. Go back and write down the history, you know, connect the dots to the whole story rather than actually like saying something or putting something out there quite yet. That might help with that anxiety because, you know, when you've got all that air, that mutable air in all affecting your mind, it can it can cause anxiety, like internally, like you feel like you're going somewhere like really, really fast, but you're not moving kind of thing. So in the mind, that can really cause a lot of restlessness. So I bet there are folks that are affected by this might be having trouble sleeping. They might be feeling awkward in their movements. It's all kinds of weird, wonky things, right? So yeah, when in doubt, write it out because there's a frustration there with Jupiter retrograde. All right. So ruler Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, and Gemini's ruler, and we've covered this, Mercury, because this now the ruler of this full moon is Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius. Oh my gosh. If you guys know me, I hope you're laughing at me. It's like, oh, I'm getting everything backwards. Well, everything is backwards right there in the stars. The ruler is Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius, and Jupiter is ruling Mercury. Okay. That is a mutual reception, right? So if we slow down, and I could take my own advice, slow down, the mutual reception of these two planets can help us sort of fuse things together and make sense of it. But I had a little trouble with that today, clearly. Okay. Well, as you can see, this is funny too, on this chart that Mercury, it's like I said, is coming out of retrograde here, but it's that S right there means that it's stationed. So that it's stationing, so stopped, because it's slow down, and it's going to start moving forward. So it's really strong, Mercury, when it's stationed. So I can see it's affecting me today. All right. Back to the full moon. So we're talking about a full moon that has something to do with communication, movement, information, gadgets. It's our immediate environment. Gemini represents our immediate environment. It represents our immediate relatives. It represents how we move around in transportation. So we could see some issues there. So find where Gemini is in your chart and where Jupiter is, because it's pretty much, conjunct in the same sign. And you'll know what to look for when it comes to the events of this full moon. All right, more things to add when it comes to the full moon, right? All of these planets. So we've got a Jupiter essence here, which is really important. This full moon is squaring, and of course, we know a square creates tension, right? We either feel like we can't do something, we can't move if we haven't had enough of feeling like we can't move these days. We've got this full moon squaring Neptune in its own sign of Pisces, its modern ruler in the sign of Pisces at a 27, which is a Gemini degree. So it's more about communication in the mind. And so when we have a square there, the square is saying whatever's going on here, right, is being interrupted, or there's a tension there from Neptune. So we either feel like we need to take some kind of action. And again, a Gemini moon is Mercury. So it's like saying something, moving, doing something, transacting something. We've got a square to Neptune. Well, what does Neptune do? Neptune dissolves. Neptune can create fuzziness and uncertainty. Neptune can kind of have us daydreaming, somewhere in Never Land. Neptune, when it comes to messages, it can be very intuitive, right? We could be feeling and sensing things, or, hearing things differently than what they actually are, right? Because that can be distortion. But at the same time, this is very, depending on where it falls in your chart, this is something that, where you might really be paying attention to, like, your dreams, or, intuitive information that comes through too. Just depends on how Neptune is going to show itself to you. But nonetheless, there's some kind of information or tension here, or that Neptune is playing in this full moon. And so really what we need to do, again, the opposition to the T-square is where we need to try and release that. And that's Virgo. And Virgo says to us, slow down and make sure that the information is correct. Slow down and make sure that you're thinking about or you're thinking about yourself, like your body and your health and your own well-being, however this is shaking out. Virgo says, be precise, think through it. Virgo's ruled by Mercury too. Yeah, we have Mercury. we've got that in Sagittarius. So it can pop off a little bit and move very quickly, but it can also be really smart because Jupiter is wisdom, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And so we can really work to balance, to see the reasoning and the logic, and to open up our mind, to be flexible. And flexibility is huge here. But the facts, right? The facts. And sometimes, Virgo will hesitate. If you can fall into that Virgo mindset, Virgo will hesitate because it wants to make sure that it's got things, it's moving in the right direction. So, but that Neptune, just pay attention to how you're feeling, right? Sun square Neptune, you can be feeling really tired. Sun square Neptune, because sun is life. Don't be moving too fast. Be careful driving. Weather and travel is kind of iffy. Neptune is, represents big storms in Pisces. And so those things you should consider when, in mundanely driving like your everyday things. And Virgo, the opposition there, is about your everyday routines and things. So Sun square Neptune, we don't want Neptune to be because we've pushed it, right? What we want to do, where we want to go, Sun, right? Our vitality, pushing towards Neptune. If we get a stop stick or an intuitive message to not go any further, we shouldn't, because Neptune can dissolve and the Sun is life. So, a little bit of the dark side of possibilities there, but something to be aware of. And then, of course, Neptune is squaring the Moon, and the Moon is our inner instincts and our emotions, right? And our family, and the mother. The Moon represents females and the past. And we have Jupiter there. And so we want to be really careful with the Neptune square, that we don't push things, and that we aren't going so fast and doing things kind of backwards and haphazardly in such a way that we lose something, right? So if you're feeling confused, if you can't see the way, if you're feeling tired, that square is just, I think, a message to just stop, slow down, proceed with caution. Check your charts again to see where this is happening. Doesn't mean that it's going to be anything, fantastical, but it could be. It just depends, if you're a mutable sign and you have planets close to this new moon, full moon, it's close to this full moon, you want to look at that, as well as, in the mutable, in Sagittarius, in Virgo, and in Pisces, right? You want to see, because you'll be experiencing that. And the degree, again, for this full moon is 23 degrees. So, anything from about 20 to 26, 27 degrees, we might be feeling this in any of the mutable signs. So, check your charts. All right, what else do we have going on here, as well as the opposition and the square to Neptune? Well, we have Saturn. So it took away my writing tool. There we go. We have Saturn playing into this. And boy, Saturn has been a huge player for a while now. Good old Saturn in the sign of Pisces, which doesn't make things always the clearest, right? In Pisces, that hits our sensitivities and our feelings, and Saturn, who is, having us stand up straight at attention here, no matter how tired we are, weary, or emotionally drained, and we're having to try and make some sense of what's going on in our lives. You can look in the Pisces area of your chart for that. But, Saturn is the ultimate teacher, and, it can cause blocks and frustrations and delays, or make us feel that way anyway, because, Saturn is time, and it requires hard work and maturity. And so that can be frustrating. And so how does this play in? Well, it is squaring by sign, not by degree, and obviously not as close as Neptune, but Saturn is squaring Jupiter. And remember, this Jupiter Mercury, which is the ruler, has been going, back and forth in an opposition, pretty close, and it still is, by sign with Jupiter. So all of these at play. Now, what do they all still have in common? Well, every one of these planets have a connection to Jupiter. Saturn, because it's in Pisces, and Pisces' traditional ruler is Jupiter. Neptune is its modern ruler. We have the sun and the moon, the full moon, both with Jupiterian flavor, right? Jupiter's conjunct the moon in Gemini, and Mercury is in Sag, which is ruled by Jupiter. So very, very much like Jupiter is very much at play, and we love Jupiter, right? Jupiter will help us grow and open our minds and learn something and bring us, luck and adventure and experiences and knowledge and truth, right? And there's a lot of this time frame that I believe is centered around truth, and learning about things that are outside of rose-colored glasses, learning about things that are hidden that we don't always pay attention to every day, and feeling those things, because Saturn in Pisces is breaking down the barriers. Remember, it's a Neptunian thing, so it dissolves. And Saturn says, no, we want to, we want to know what all of this is, and we want to consider it and work hard to improve or create something, Piscean. And what Saturn is borders, and Pisces is no, there are no borders. We are all connected, which is why that emotional, sensitive sort of feeling stuff comes in, and why Saturn can be heavy and it can cause depression, because it's sensitive and it's emotional. And it's also things that come up, around healthcare and around pharmaceuticals and chemicals and water and mental health and all those things. And so Saturn is there, and it is in a square by sign. And we're talking about Mercury, Jupiter, and a full moon in Gemini. And so very much not, again, like a block in feeling like we can't think clearly, right? Or we are confused in our movements, or we just can't move, right? The harder we work, the more we try, there's something that we can't see or we don't understand yet that feels like it's keeping us from doing anything or accomplishing what it is that we're trying to work on. And Saturn wants us to keep trying, right? Saturn is have faith in Pisces, right? Have hope. Don't give up. Even if you can't see the tangible results, keep working. Saturn square Jupiter retrograde is more stopping, less growth. Why? Well, clearly with the Mercury having been in retrograde, right? Coming into a square once it starts to move forward to Saturn and squaring Jupiter and this full moon, something's not ready yet. The universe is saying something's going to grow, something's going to move, but we have to rework something. We have to either learn more or communicate more or go back and clean something up and revise it and make sure that it's that it's correct, that we're sure that we're doing the right thing. But it's a frustrating time. Saturn there squaring Jupiter. It's not an exact square. We had a Saturn square Jupiter back in the middle of August. So you can think about what was that like? What was going on in the middle of August? Because we're having another exact, like Saturn is now direct, right? And it's coming into an exact square with a retrograde Jupiter at the end of this month. I think it's December 30th. So that's the second square. And then we will experience a third Saturn square Jupiter. I believe it's in April, but that's going to be after they have moved signs. So it will be a square from Saturn in Aries to Jupiter just as it goes into Cancer. And it can't be April. It's got to be May, probably late May that we experience that. So, all the work, everything that we're doing. And when Saturn goes into Aries, that represents something new, right? And Saturn in the sign of Pisces right now is sort of saying we might even be cleaning up the old stuff or preparing to integrate our past experience with our new experience, or there's something here, right? Nonetheless, it feels frustrating. You could be feeling super frustrated, and just like you're not going anywhere, and the harder you work, you're not growing. And this could come, in the form of health issues or economic issues, right? Pisces, again, it's about all the things that all of us need, and our mental health and things like that. So these can be difficult times with these squares. So that is part of this. And, as we go into the holidays, we kind of know that some people struggle anyway. And, Saturn and Pisces can be about loss. Neptune and Pisces is about loss. So we could be feeling the stress and the pain over some kind of loss or change. Or we could just overall, depending on who we are and, how we feel into what's going on in our environment, right? Gemini, we could just be feeling the collective sadness, right? The collective sort of heaviness and depression And I think, obviously economically things aren't great. So we're all kind of feeling that. And, the healthcare issues and all these things, Saturn can make things very, very heavy, but it wants us to create solutions. So keep all of that in mind. Check your charts for where Gemini is and, where you're feeling these squares. And be extra nice to yourself. Now, we do have obviously other things in this chart that are helping, that can help. It all depends. It's all about perspective. Like, none of this can be bad, right? You might find out retrospectively that all of this frustration and holding back and delays that we're feeling and pressure gave us time to put together something better, a better situation, right? So that when things do move forward, it's better than we ever could have dreamed it to be, right? Pisces is a dream. So we are making a dream into reality in some way, potentially. It just doesn't feel easy. We may not even realize what that is. Okay, so we have also, I want to touch on, we have these planets in Aquarius, which are important because they are in a trine by sign to this full moon. So we have Pluto back into Aquarius now for 20 years, 0 degrees. Remember, Pluto entered into Aquarius last February. So think about what changed and then what you may have, or what you wanted to keep, move forward, or what was purged from your life, or what did you feel like you had broken free from, or something back in February, right? It did, because it retrograded back to 29 Capricorn, that little, like 2-3 months where it went back and sat right on 29 degrees of Capricorn, which is super intense. And, we have seen, and we will continue to see, like, because Capricorn represents foundation and structure, but it's more in the, the corporate environments, the financial environments, the government environments, right? Things that Saturn represents time. So it's old structures and foundations. And we've seen some really big shakeups of things that we have built a foundation on in our lives, potentially kind of really crumble, and we're being forced to move forward. So think about that time frame. And now that Pluto is back, 0 degrees of Aquarius, is something now feeling intense or pressurous, or maybe even moving forward nicely. Like, maybe it's ready now. Maybe Pluto went back to 29 in Capricorn to get rid of whatever it needed. Yes, to get rid of during that cycle that we were in since 2008, so that now it can move into Aquarius without baggage, right? Only carrying what is practical, right? Aquarius, the air sign. Fixed air sign, right? So anyway, we have Pluto back in Aquarius that is trining this by sign, not by degree. I mean, Pluto's at 0, but there's still an effect there. Pluto's going to be there for a long time. So I know I've read a lot of things and got a lot of questions like, oh, how's Pluto in Aquarius going to affect me? Because, people get a little bit afraid of Pluto, and Pluto does, it is the things that we fear, because we fear the unknown. We fear huge change. We fear death. But remember, Pluto is about transformation too. So Pluto's going to be there a long time, unless you've got really early degrees of Aquarius, or, any of the mutable signs where it's a square, or an opposition like to Leo. You probably won't feel a whole lot now. Although sometimes, 0 degrees is very strong when the entrance or the ingress into a sign, something will come to light or happen, and then maybe that's going to be thematic. But it's a very long, slow process, usually, unless it's activating something in your chart. And it could be, right? Look at your chart. But by sign, it's trining. So it's going to begin, which is good. A trine is positive. It's of the nature of Jupiter, right? So it's not going to, Jupiter, I think, is going to go back to 11 degrees. So, I don't think, maybe Pluto's at 1 degree by then. So we'll have a 10 degree spread. But anyway, Pluto trining Gemini is positive, because that's giving us the power to push things through. And maybe when Jupiter goes direct, like I said, Pluto's moved closer, and we just might see a sudden surge, right? Aquarius is about the community and the collective. It's about things moving very fast. The modern day ruler of Aquarius is Uranus, which is lightning speed, right? Change, progress, rebelliousness, and future forward thinking and movement. So that's a positive. Maybe something's getting set up because it's just ready to take off here. And we have Venus here that is also trining by sign. And Venus, of course, we know is the planet of pleasure and luxury and love and money and all of the things that we desire. Venus can be a little lazy, but in the sign of Aquarius, probably not so much lazy as is possibly preoccupied, or maybe a little distant or detached, or focused on the more cerebral intellectual things rather than the warm and fuzzy things, unique things, and so the collective, it can be a little off the wall. We as a collective which is Aquarius, the community, the collective, friends, our goals, the things we want to accomplish. Maybe we're a little bit more focused on groups of people and, doing things that are unique and different. Well, I talked about the responses, right? Being an air sign Aquarius, and the overall flavor and feeling of what happened with the United Healthcare person, that the collective is kind of adopting, the similar feelings about these things, right? So, but Venus trining the Gemini placements is positive, especially as it comes closer to Jupiter, because Venus those are the two benefics, right? Venus trine Jupiter, growth, expansion. Venus, she's kind of in the power position, so she's the one pushing for that growth, and Jupiter retrograde may not happen, but things might get a little bit off the wall, right? So expect things that are interesting and different and maybe very fast moving with Venus in Aquarius. Now remember, Venus is really powered up. She is coming out of a conjunction with Pluto. So either she's dead dog tired and she's drained from, Pluto's power and pressure, or she's powered up and she's about ready to become reborn, right? It's like, I won't go into the Venus cycle, but she's going to come out and she's going to, have a renewed, refreshed sense of herself here. So, could be very powerful. Now, we've had, it's so important, right? This is positive. Pay attention. What does that mean? Well, amongst all of this, what we're being blocked from, what we feel frustrated by, the things we're seeing out in the collective, how our minds are working, even maybe anxiety, things feeling backwards. Maybe the best thing to do is detach ourselves a little bit, right? Find the groups that we enjoy being with. Find our power within the community, like find a purpose or a reason to come together and create change with people. At the very least, if Venus, you can find something that kind of emotionally detaches you, or at least you have the ability to look at what's going on around you, even if it's swirly and crazy, in a little bit more, intellectual and way, because Aquarius can be like that. So just like, very easy to put yourself outside the masses. If it feels a little crazy, step away and find something else that is fun and exciting until the dust settles. So that's positive. Now we also have Venus that is in an opposition, has been in an opposition with Mars, right? The two counterparts, right? Mars, the masculine, Venus, the feminine. In an opposition, which is at odds with each other. Like maybe they're at odds with one another, just at a little bit of a distance, but they're facing each other. So they kind of have to deal with it, or they're at least feeling the separation or the tension there, right? In the opposition, which doesn't always have to be a bad thing. But the thing about that, again, is Venus is in the power position because she was just charged up by Pluto, or like I said, drained by Pluto. Something has changed with Venus, right? And she's in opposition to Mars, which is retrograde as of last Friday in the sign of Leo. So Mars is our action and our vitality, and you know how we can move and change things, and even our body, right? It's retrograde in the sign of Leo, which is about joy, right? It's about creation, creativity, and it's about children, and it's about, you know, shining, right? And Mars right there. Good place for Mars and Leo, but it's retrograde. So we might be feeling again like run down, or Mars, whatever represents Mars in your life and in your chart, could be rolling back, right? Venus, so it's kind of moving away from Venus. Venus might be powered up and ready to go, and Mars is saying, no, you know, I have to go back and rework something, or, you know, I'm slowing down, because Mars retrograde is slowing down, and Mars is what we use a lot of times to speed up. So we just might have to be a little bit creative about how we meet in the middle here, right? Maybe it just means if Venus is where she's at, she goes off and does her own thing, and, you know, Mars goes back and figures out his deal. Mars is going to be retrograde all the way back into Cancer for a long time. It's not, once it gets into Cancer, it's not, you know, it's going to go back over all of those degrees and not start to move forward from where it began its retrograde until the end of March. So it's a really long retrograde. And so that can indicate, you know, a slowdown of things that you really want to get done, or how you're feeling, right? And it's also because Mars, you know, is a malefic, and it represents cutting and severing and accidents and aggression and fevers and all those things. And it's a fire sign, a fixed fire sign. We want to be careful of our health and our movements for sure. And, you know, even if we're balancing out this Mars Venus, we just be really careful that Venus isn't going too crazy. You know, the conjunction with Pluto might have caused a little trouble financially for folks, or maybe within relationships. So that opposition, you know, if it's going to be reconciled, the best way to do that is to just kind of allow the separation and go your own way. And then when things aren't so tense and everybody's figured out their own things, that they can come back together if that's what's supposed to happen. Keeping in mind that we're still in the nodal transit of Aries. Whoops, why is that not working? Aries, North Node, and Libra, South Node. And of course, these are the rulers. Now, you know, Venus, she is a ruler of the South Node by trine to Libra. Again, Venus is powered up, and Venus is letting something go or changing some kind of behavior. So there's a lot going on with Venus here, and Mars is being forced to look at I think, like, going back, like, maybe Mars hasn't completed correctly, or something that it needs to move forward, right? To meet what it is that is so loudly speaking to Mars with this North Node in Aries, because these nodes will change in January to Pisces and Virgo. But Venus is moving away from the South Node. So she's moving away from, again, past behaviors, past relationships, past injustices, and she's powered up right now. So she, you know, she's outspoken in an air sign, and she's on the move. And Mars is slowing down, right? Not a bad thing, but maybe it might even actually be a good thing, right? Maybe it's less aggressive, but hopefully it's not like a distorted Mars, right? Because that can get a little wonky. But it's just it's slow down your movements, take care of yourself, rework something, and, you know, think about the direction that you're going. You know, what has been happening throughout this eclipse cycle. Which has been going on for 18 months now, right? We had the eclipses in October, and which is a Libra eclipse, and the other eclipse we had was Pisces, which is the first one that's, you know, kind of giving us a preview of this next nodal transit. But we had the eclipses in March and April that, you know, maybe that's what Mars is dealing with, going back and dealing with what was going on in the springtime, and even the Aries eclipses that started the year before. So don't expect a whole lot from Mars, and I wouldn't push Mars, you know, like, and that's yourself too. Like, I wouldn't push yourself. Like, if you're feeling tired, or you something even irritable or angry, because all of that's Mars. It's like just retreating is good, right? Deal with the opposition, allow the separation, right? Maybe it's a separation from people and groups because that's Aquarius. Maybe it's a separation in a relationship. Maybe it's a cooling off period where you've got, because Venus represents money, where you've got to go back and refigure, how you're going to take action or clean up something, financially. So, because, Venus is there saying, I'm ready to go here. So that Venus-Mars opposition is important. Obviously, it's connected to the nodes, and those are the nodes of the moon. So we look at the moon too when we're looking at the nodes. So, kind of when I look at it, it's sort of like no matter where the lunar events are, they have a connection to the nodes that are transiting at the time. So that's important. All right, one last thing is we did have Venus, or Venus is coming into a square with Uranus in Taurus, right? And we need to watch Venus square Uranus, right? That Uranus can be sudden breaks, sudden movement, things that surprise us. Taurus is things related to our body. It's anything that we own, possess, consume. It's our finances, debts. Venus, again, very powerful in the sign of Aquarius, has the stronger position. She's moving towards Uranus. So, there could be a break, in something. Venus, relationships, finances. Doesn't mean, a square does not mean, just like a trine doesn't mean it's always going to be good. A square doesn't mean it's always going to be bad. It just means it's wanting movement, change, something. And it could be very sudden just you might feel disruptive or surprising. I mean, a square is of the nature of Mars, right? So there's movement and it can feel difficult. So we're coming into a Venus square Uranus, and in Venus, relationships, money, right? In Taurus is money, but it is also about what we have and what our values are, which can be with Venus relationships. So be careful. This could be, a problem or a break in relationships with the groups of people. You could be changing your friends or who you're associated with. So you're going off and, connecting with other people, different ideas. That could be part of it. Or it could be actual, relationship breaks. So you want to be careful. Again, it's like kind of going back to like, maybe not a good time to push things, right? Who knows? But Venus is riding high. So we got to be careful that she doesn't get arrogant, right? At one point, Pluto and Venus, when they met, they were trining Uranus. So this could have been like a really big, big change when it came to a relationship or something financial, like really big. Remember, Venus conjunct Pluto, like we're talking about money. Pluto is power and money. I mean, some of you may have really hit it big, in with investments even, right? Because Aquarius opposite Leo. Leo represents the stock market. So this could be like really going big, right? Going really big and seeing a sudden change or some kind of progress or something that is volatile, up and down, up and down. You'll have to let me know, but that could apply to a relationship too. Again, all of this depends on where these things are at in your chart. So that is the full moon. There's a lot going on. And, it's very concentrated too, if you notice. All of this energy is very concentrated. We have obviously the node here, but, from here, it's like everything's happening, and moving this way, on this side of the chart. So there's a lot of concentration there in what's going on. And, it's having left the North Node, coming towards the North Node. It's very interesting. And also Mars moving retrograde is coming back towards and applying to Chiron before it applies to the North Node. And of course, it won't get that far to actually hit a conjunction. But nonetheless, they're moving towards one another for some kind of reason. And they will, aspect by sign. So maybe Mars is going back to heal something, right? That it missed in the past. That Chiron in Aries at 19 degrees is exactly the degree of the Aries eclipse in April. So could be related. All of the way we read astrology is about cycles, right? Every planet has a cycle. Where does it start? Where does it end? I look at the, obviously the eclipses and, what's going to be triggered as something opens up. I've talked to you guys about how Jupiter works. It goes through and it opens up a degree, but you may not see what that means until other planets come through and trip it. And incidentally, we had that 29 degree Capricorn retrograde for a little while there. Now Pluto, and now it's moved forward. But let's not forget, I just said we had Venus hit there first, right? Venus conjunct Pluto at 29 Capricorn, old things dying that we may have valued, relationships, ways of making money, corporate situations, banks having issues. But we're going to have that 29 degrees, even though Pluto's moved into zero, tripped off every time a planet goes through that 29 through 8. Well, we've got it next coming through. The sun is going to hit 29 degrees. That's shining a light on something. We might see really what's being uncovered, what was smashed and killed and being transformed. And, now we might see, what's going on. So the sun, obviously, when it gets to 29 Cap, it's going to be closer to the end of the month. So we'll see what happens. Pay attention to that. Then we'll have Mercury and move through and hit that 29th degree, which is also going to trip off that place. So 29 degrees Cap. Yep, it went back for a few months and then it started to move forward, Pluto. But it doesn't mean that 29 degree, that clearing of the old is quite done yet, because as the planets come through, they're going to trip them. And then, of course, we'll have Mars too. So, and eventually the other planets. So this is how you see long range cycles can play out over a long, long time. Anyway, that is this full moon in the sign of Gemini. And I want to hear from all of you guys how you are doing, how this is affecting you. If you have questions about this full moon, drop them down in the comment section. I'm always happy to answer them. Wishing you guys an awesome, wonderful, fun, right? Maybe you're going to go and skate on ice like the Sabian symbol says with your kids. Otherwise, skating on ice, I think to myself, I don't know why it keeps coming to me. It's like, could that be thin ice? Be really careful. It's not thin ice, right? Which doesn't mean, it can be physical something, be careful you don't hurt yourself. But driving on ice, things like that. But, just if you feel like you're pushing something and somebody's not ready or it's not ready, maybe don't do it. Talked a lot about that so far, so I won't go over it again. But yeah, have a great Christmas. Wishing you and your family a merry and happy. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for being patient with me. I appreciate it. I will talk to you soon. Until then, may the stars forever be in your favor, and God bless all of the mutable signs right now, especially myself. Okay, guys, our pot is coming, right? Our movement is coming. It is coming. And if something came during the retrograde, just know, everybody talk. I keep adding things, right? Jupiter and Gemini. I have a Jupiter and Gemini. But if you started something during the retrograde, they always say, don't start anything new. Well, technically, yeah, but you can't not do what comes up. Take a new job, if you see something that is a perfect deal. The idea is having researched it, having read the fine print, being very careful, consulted whoever, and just know that there may be a change. You started something one way, you went into something one way. There might be a slight tweak or a change, but Mercury is flexible. Mercury knows this and that can be true. So anything can be worked out, right? Okay, it just might have to be worked out. That's all. All right. Back to saying goodbye and Merry Christmas. I will talk to you all soon. Take good care.